Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I am thrilled to welcome the Chief Operating Officer of the International March of the Living, Liz Panitch. Liz, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but I want to start by going back with you. So, where did you grow up, and what was your family life like, in particular with regard to Judaism?
I grew up in New York City, actually.
Oh, really?
Everyone
Where?
always asks me what that's like, and I say, well, what's the suburbs like? I grew up in a traditional modern Orthodox family, went to Jewish school throughout my life, and
Where in
then
New
went,
York were you?
I was on the Upper East Side.
Okay. I know you can't tell I'm from New York as well, but from the accent, but I'm from Brooklyn. So, did you read a lot about the Holocaust as a kid?
It definitely was sort of part of our identity. I don't actually have any grandparents that survived the Holocaust, which people
Hmm.
find surprising. I did, do some research in Yad Vashem and found some family members that had, the similar last name, which would mean that they're related in some way,
So,
but nothing direct. But even with that knowledge, something connected me always to this story, even though it wasn't personal, and sort of it stayed with me. I don't know.
all right, okay. So, for those who don't know, can you explain a little bit what the International March of the Living does as an organization?
Sure. So the March of the Living was started in around 1988, 1989 by a group of Israelis who saw that Holocaust denial was becoming more prevalent, more prominent on campuses around the world.
Hmm.
And they said the best way to combat that was actually to bring people to the places where these things happened with survivors so they can see for themselves. Elie Wiesel came on one of those first ones, and there's a famous
No,
quote
okay.
we always use that says, when you listen to a witness, you become a witness. And that's sort of our driving force. In the beginning, the very first march was in 1989. There was around 1,000 people, and since then it's grown. It used to go every other year, and now it goes every year, and we have between 8 to 10,000 people at a time.
Oh, well, okay.
The
So,
march is, yeah,
go ahead. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. The march is very time intentional, is a word I like to use, in that we are in Poland on Yom HaShoah, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, and then travel to Israel for Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom HaZikaron for Memorial Day and Independence Day. So it's always occurring at the same time of the year, which is in the spring. And we bring students, young adults, and adults from all over the globe. So Canada, the United States, Panama, Mexico,
Oh,
Argentina,
okay.
Brazil, South Africa, Japan, et cetera, et cetera. And
Uh,
they're all having um, this singular experience, but together, unified.
which is amazing. I'll get into that more later because I remember growing up, I never used to want to go there. It's just like, I'm giving money to the place that did this. And now my mind has changed so much on that because I think of the importance of going there now too. So, how did you first become involved with them? What drew you to the organization?
So Holocaust studies was always present in my life,
Hmm.
for some reason that connected me to it. So when I was in college, I interned at Yad Vashem, and I also interned at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in the city. And then I actually have my bachelor's degree in architectural theory, which is nothing to do with this, but it was history and theory. But I wrote my thesis on Holocaust memorials. And I did a survey of the Holocaust memorials that are, think about it, in sort of the synagogues or the schools that we attend here in the tri-state area. There's always some token memorial somewhere in a
Okay.
corner, and whether it's a Holocaust Torah or a lamp on the wall or something, or there's some sort of architecture. There's a lamp, but there's six of them. Like something is always referencing. So I
Hmm.
decided to take a look at that and see if I can come up with any conclusions from there from an architectural perspective. So that was always there. And then I feel like going to Poland itself and seeing these sites with your own 2 feet is way more powerful than anything you can learn in the classroom. So once I graduated college and I found the March, I said, that's where I want to work. And I pursued them until they hired me, and I'm still here 17 years later.
So did you go on an actual march before applying for the job?
I went on a trip to Poland, but it wasn't
Okay.
with the March of
With
the
it.
Living.
Uh-huh. So
Mhm.
before we get into the actual march itself, so I'm just curious, like for you, what's a typical day like for you? So what are your responsibilities?
Oh, a lot. I'm in charge of all logistics and operations for the program. So I'm in touch with the group leaders from around the world.
Hmm.
I'm doing all of the
I was
flights,
going to ask about that, right? Okay.
hotels, itineraries, programming, finances, it's
Right.
anything that falls under operations.
So, and what's the actual march like? I mean, what does it entail? You started mentioning a little bit there too. You get the group together. So what happens once you're going on there?
So groups, we work with the groups individually to craft an itinerary that really works for the kind of people that are with their program. So it is customizable. And then groups typically spend, around a week, I would say, in Poland, visiting various sites, both of the Holocaust, but also pre-life and Jewish life today.
Hmm.
And then everybody is around the country. And then on Yom HaShoah itself, everybody comes together. We gather in Auschwitz, and then we march a solemn march from Auschwitz to Birkenau. Um, like I said, it's between 8 to 10,000 people, followed
Right.
by formal ceremonies and the crematoria in Birkenau.
So you do craft, you do customize it to bend depending on who's going?
Yes, let's say there's a group that like really they're bringing a survivor with them that really wants to go to this kind of camp that their family was in. We will do that for them, or they really have an interest in looking at the graves of rabbis or something like that. We will work with the group as
Right.
long as it's logistically feasible to build the itinerary for what works with their participants.
That's amazing. So how has the march changed over the years? Like, and if so, in what ways?
So in the beginning, it was really focused on the students, and it is still very much focused on the students, but we've had more and more demand from young adults and adults to come on the program.
Hmm.
So we've opened that up a little bit. It's what's happening is that, high school students come on this program and then their parents, see the effect it has on their kids and they want to come too. So we've had more participation from young adults and adults, although our focus is still high school. And I would say, sadly, the amount of Holocaust survivors that are
Right.
coming
I
and
was going to
able
ask
to
about
come
that
to
as
the
well.
group
Right.
has dwindled. Yeah.
So it sounds the program, it's like it must be tough to balance like the emotional tones in it because you're going to places like, Auschwitz where some of the worst atrocities, ever committed occurred, and then making it about, I guess, hope and going to Israel. So is it very tough to strike that balance emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, it is an emotional trip. But I think that our group leaders do a really good job and our educators do a good job of working with the kids and with the adults that are there. And it, like I said in the beginning, it's really the March of Living is very much about unity and about hope. And you're doing this experience together so that they see that they're part of something much greater than themselves
Hmm.
is very uplifting, I think. And people don't realize this, but half of the march itself is actually non-Jewish
Yeah,
participants.
I was going to ask about that. So you do have a lot of non-Jews going as well now.
We have a lot of non-Jewish students coming, mostly from Europe, which when people hear, they're very surprised. But if you think about it, like how beautiful is that?
It is,
That
yeah.
well, that this is not their story, but they made it a point to join us in this journey for the Jewish people and sort of um, our responsibility of memory to know that there's other people outside of our community that have taken on this responsibility as well is just heartwarming, I think.
I'm going to come back to that in a second because I want to go back first to the Holocaust survivors because how has it been for them to participate in this? I mean, just what are some of the more memorable stories that you know of that included the Holocaust survivors going back to, visit these places?
No, I think that there's a really, it's very impactful for obviously for the participants to be with the survivors to hear their stories from them
Sure.
directly. Obviously, it's very different than going alone, but I think for the survivors themselves, they get a lot of support and, and from the other people going with them when they go back and to be able to tell their stories and know that their stories won't stay with them, but they're going to, every single person you tell, that story is going to be told 10 and 20 times, more. I think they get a lot of strength from it as well. And we have some survivors that have been coming with us for almost 20 years. And you sometimes have to
Wow.
think, how do they have the energy to do this again and again? But they do. And I think it really drives them to be able to tell their story to more and more people. And it gives them a lot of energy to keep going. And there are some that at 20 years they've been doing this, which is crazy.
Do you go on each one? Do you go on every trip that they do?
I do. Yeah.
So I've also on the other side of this. I mean, I've seen clips at times of descendants of Nazis, who came purposely on trips like this to see themselves in a way of, I guess, reconciling their family's involvement. Have you seen any of that during your time there?
There was one, and I can't recall his name, but there was definitely someone that we worked with who came from one of our U.S. delegations who knew that he came from Nazis, and he sort of turned his perspective around, and then did come on the program. I remiss that I don't remember his name, but um, that had a very, very moving effect on the people
Oh,
that were with him, for
oh,
sure.
I can imagine that. Incredible. So this year marked the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the camp. So what special things were done for that?
So, right, so it was 80 years to liberation,
Right.
because, from 1945 to 2025, and our goal was to bring 80 Holocaust survivors on the program, which was not an easy
Wow.
feat, but we did it.
Sure.
We did it, and we brought around half of them from Israel and half of them from the diaspora, and that was really special. That was actually the largest gathering of survivors in Auschwitz in recent years, and
Wow.
could possibly have been the last largest gathering. We hope to do the same this year to have with the 81. We hope to bring 81, and that's our goal. And we're working hard towards that
How
goal.
emotional was that for everyone there on that trip? Other people came as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, last year we were greeted also by the president of Poland and the president of Israel, in addition to the 80 survivors, as well as released hostages and freed hostages of October 7th and victims of October 7th. And some of the most powerful moments on last year's program was the meeting of October 7th released hostages and Holocaust survivors underneath the gates of Arbeit Macht Frei, and you can imagine how emotional that was for
Right. Can
everybody
you
that
can you share a
witnessed
little
it.
bit more about because I was just about to ask that because I saw that you did that. I saw that you coordinated the event. And how did that whole come about, first of all? I mean, that must have been really difficult to get done. So how did it come about and what impact did it have on everyone else around there?
We work with really with amazing companies and supporters. We were working with the Minomadim Foundation in Israel, who helped us with this October 7th delegation. And and then we also worked with also a lot of donors, especially in the high tech fields, for bringing the survivors. And that reunion, and there was one particular moment last year that was sort of widely publicized. But for the survivors to see the strength from the victims, the young victims of October 7th and the October 7th victims, to see the survivors and to see that they rebuilt their lives after what happened to them. And so they were giving each other, I think, they were feeding off of each other's support and energy. And we've actually continued those reunions. We just published in some newspapers. We regathered those survivors and those victims of October 7th, those freed hostages, around Hanukkah, and we had
Oh,
reunions
nice.
between the two of them, and they sort of gave messages of hope in light of Hanukkah, and you can sort of take a look at that.
You just mentioned there was a one publicized, highly publicized. Can you just talk about that one?
It was just covered by a lot of press.
Mhm.
There was we had two survivors meeting with Agam Berger and Ori Mikitish, who was both were hostages, and that reunion. And you can take a look at that if you Google it. It was widely publicized.
So you also mentioned before like the logistical challenges in coordinating the march. Can you give like a recent example and what was done to remedy that?
Well, when you're thinking about 8 to 10,000
Sure.
people, that's a lot of people. You have to coordinate, obviously, hotels and meals and flights, and we charter everybody over to Israel, which is a lot of aircraft.
Mm.
And when you have that many people, you're always going to have something, but you sort of deal with one thing at a time and just keep going.
Okay, so we talked about the hostages, we talked about the survivors, because one of the main purposes of the program or something like this is also, and you mentioned, is combating anti-Semitism. So we've seen that growing around the world, and like we said, we're just talking about that. So how much do real world events play a part in particular program? Like you see something that's going on around the world at that particular time and say, let's change the curriculum a little bit to put that into what we're doing now.
I mean, sure, impacts all of us, and all the people from around the world that are part of the Jewish community, especially what just happened on Bondi Beach. We have a group from
Right.
Australia, and Gary Samovitz, who's our director of March of Living Australia, put out a beautiful video where he was saying, we go to these sites of Treblinka and Majdanek and Auschwitz, and we're learning about where Jews were targeted, and we think that this is history, but he was speaking from Bondi Beach, and he said, but this is my reality, this is my present. And what does that mean in terms of what we're doing in our and the education and sort of how we move forward? And he came out of it by saying that this is really a time for us all to move forward together as one. He was talking about Australia, but as one Australia. And this is the time to embrace each other. And I think that if there's anything that we've learned from the past, couple of years, I mean, there's always been anti-Semitism, but in the uptick in the past couple of
Right.
years is that we need to give support to each other. We have to learn from the lessons of the past. I think the fact that we have so many non-Jewish participants that come on the program is very uplifting, because, and then also for the students themselves to give them really pride in their Jewish identity, especially in this time where it's not easy. And I don't think that any student going to a college campus in the United States right now, it's
Yeah.
not easy. And for them to have this experience that's really giving them pride in their identity and creating a community that they now have that they can lean on support on is really important for them.
You mentioned that so many, you have a lot of non-Jews going to the event. Is there an effort on like from March of the Living to get more participation from non-Jews? Because you spread that message of anti-hate messaging.
Absolutely. And we're always looking to partner with new organizations and new kind of people that want to come. Most of our non-Jewish participants are coming from Europe,
Hmm.
but we absolutely have a desire to spread this really powerful journey with as many people as want to participate in it as possible, both within the Jewish world and in the non-Jewish world. So anybody that's interested should let us know.
And going back to the Holocaust survivors, you said it yourself, and that's one of the things that I did want to ask about. So we're at an age, unfortunately, that there aren't as many left, and we're getting up in years, everyone. So what does the March of the Living do? You have them go. Is it doing anything also to preserve their stories?
Yeah, we're doing as much as we can to document them with both video and photo of their experiences. Working with second generation also to be able to tell, and third generation to be able to tell the story of their parents and grandparents.
Hmm.
Acknowledging that these are the final years, unfortunately, that the survivors are going to be able to make the journey, and definitely after, that I keep saying like this is the time. There's only so many years left, and if you were ever considering coming on a journey like this, do it now,
Right.
before it's too late. Of course, a journey to Poland and Israel will be, impactful regardless, but it's so much more impactful when you're doing it with somebody who was there. But we're doing as much as we can to document as many of the interactions as possible and looking at the uses of technology for be able to incorporate their testimonies in the future when they're no longer present.
Is because I've interviewed a lot of on this podcast. I've interviewed a lot of people that descendants of. So is the March of the Living, will that be accessible to other people to see Holocaust survivor testimony?
Um, that's a good question. I think it's something that we're still in conversation about and still working through. And I think any Holocaust education organization is still working through what the future looks like and trying to figure it out. We've partnered with some organizations on creating this testimony. We've done a couple of the 360 testimonies with the Shoah
Hmm.
Foundation as well, with our survivors. And I think it's a work in progress. But we have on our website all of our survivors that have come on the program and their bios and things like that. So everyone can look through that. And then in terms of documenting their interactions on the ground, that's something that we're talking about and how we can bring it out to the public.
Okay, I just want to veer off for 1 second because looking at your bio there. So you went to Barnard, correct?
Hmm.
Okay, which is part of Columbia. So when you see what's happening at places like Columbia now, and you mentioned the colleges, but the schools before. So what goes through your mind when you see, especially considering what you do now?
I mean, I think without giving away my age, I think I grew up in a very sort of privileged time where I never really had to question my Judaism in terms of being part of the greater world. And I remember in college, we have all of the Chagim, which always conflict with college. And I was able to go up to my professors and say, I'm going to be out for
Right.
this many days and just I will make up the work. Please tell me what I need to do. I promise you I'll be on top of it. And there was not one professor that was not accommodating. And to know now that that's not the reality and that people have to be, afraid and that they can't walk with their kippah on campus, especially
Right.
in my alma mater, it's jarring. And unfortunately, we're becoming more and more, I think, used to it, which is horrific, that it should be our new norm.
It's the
And like I
normalized,
said,
right? Yeah.
yeah, as a generation that really never had to, I think a privileged generation growing up in America where I never really had to second guess it. Now we're coming to the reality. Now, sort of our bubble has been burst in some way, but we can't be complacent about it, right? Just because this was common and before I came along and was common in other countries does not mean that we settle. And I think we have to do as much as we can to support these students and give them as much sense of Jewish pride and not back down. We cannot allow this to be our
Oh,
reality.
I agree 100%. I mean, I went to Brooklyn College, and it's unrecognizable to me now when I read the stories happening there, and I just see New York in general. It's saddening, and it's disheartening to see a place that I grew up in with so many, such a Jewish feel. Now Jews are like, almost hunted. It's just terrible. Yeah. So on that same note, so is there an outreach by March of the Living to universities or schools saying, we'd like to work in conjunction with you? Is that like, maybe you offer programming to you?
So I'll say two things. One is the time of the year of the March of Living is particularly problematic for college students because it's always in April, May, which is the time of their final exams and things
Right.
like that. But there is an effort on our part to continue to grow our alumni connection system because it's very common that you'll have on a particular campus at least one or two or three alumni that went in the program in different years. And if we can have them identify each other to be able to support each other, especially in a hostile environment, for people to have gone on this journey of the March of a Living, maybe not, they weren't on the same delegation together, but they had the similar experience that and working with them and the alumni on campus to be able to support them is something that we're very, very interested in working through.
No, that's fantastic. I was hoping that, that exactly what you're doing, that there's some sort of outreach program because, like, you just spoke about a second ago about all the things that the Jewish university students are going through. So, like, just now on a personal level, what's been the most rewarding aspect for you from having worked at March of the Living?
Um, I've had people come up to me that tells me that the program changed their lives.
Mm,
And, you go through a lot of, you weed through a lot of things and you're doing a lot of back end work and a lot of logistics and things like that. But and it's a whole year, it takes a whole year to plan. But when you're actually in Poland and you see all of that work and you see it come to fruition and you see the effect it's having on people's lives, it's so worth it. You know what I
right,
mean? And there's a moment, and when I'm in Poland, I'm running around because, as you can imagine, running operations for this is,
right.
you know, but there's always a moment where I force myself to stop and wait. And on the ceremony in Birkenau, usually I'm running around backstage doing God knows what. But when we come to Hatikva at the ceremony, when there's 10,000 people there, I always find a Holocaust survivor and I stand next to them and I sing with them that song. And that's
Hmm.
my moment. I take 2 minutes out of my whole year to just stop and look and listen and see what I helped create. And for me, it fuels me to keep going. And it's been 17 years and hopefully more.
How was the first time that you went, that you actually stepped foot inside one of the camps? Do you remember your feelings then?
When I was younger,
Either with your younger, the
um,
first time you went as part of March of the Living.
well, my first time I went was I was in high school.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember actually and I give this advice to people a lot because everybody reacts differently and there's no right or wrong way to react to the material that you're seeing. And that's always advice that I give people is don't have any expectations. Because when I went in, you're expecting to cry and you're expecting to be emotional. And sometimes it doesn't click right away.
Hmm.
And I remember being there and saying, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I crying? Right? And you're sort of trying to create this emotional effect, and it didn't happen right away. And I remember on the last day, finally something clicked. But I think I was in Auschwitz. It was our last day. And something clicked in me. And I had that moment. And I remember, because I wrote a journal, and everyone should bring a journal when they come on these kind of programs, is I I imagined my relationship with my parents at that time. And I was, high school. And sort of everything that I was seeing and families broken apart. And it was something that really it got to me in terms of my relationship with my parents. And that was sort of the click that I had in terms of taking whatever I was learning and applying it to my own life. So I always remember that.
That just hit me so much because I used to teach Holocaust studies, and one of the, we taught Night by Elie Wiesel, and every single time we got to the part with, him and his father, the last time he saw his father, it hit me every single time. And that's what one of the first things I remember, getting interested in the March of the Living in general because of that. And my father taught Holocaust study too, so I always like personalized it a little bit. So it just always hit me, thinking about my family going through the same thing there too. So it's just amazing that you said that. So what advice, and you started talking about giving advice, what advice would you give to Jewish students or Jewish leaders who are trying to combat anti-Semitism now?
Stay strong.
Mhm.
We're with you. You have more allies than you realize. Shut down the haters and don't cow down, and keep your head up high, and we will get through this just like we have in our thousands of years of history.
And for people who want to get involved with March of the Living, what's the best way to get started?
You can definitely email me, liz@motl.org, March of the Living, motl.org. Take a look at our website. We're always looking to bring more people interested on the program, to create more partnerships with, organizations around the world. I think the March of the Living is a really powerful and impactful journey. And as many people that can come on the experience or be part of it, we encourage them to join us.
And that's students and adults and whoever.
Students, young adults, yes, everyone.
And you already have 2026's event planned?
Working really hard, yes, but we hope to have at least 8,000 people on the ground in April.
Fantastic. Liz, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you and finding out more about the information about March of the Living. I think it's an incredible thing that you do and the organization does. And again, just thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for reaching out and letting us use this platform to let more people know about the program. And hopefully you'll come on the march one day as well.
I definitely plan on it one day. All right, let me sign this off. Again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. Again, a very special thanks to Liz Panitch. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.